Electronic arts. Two words that conjure some of the most intense hatred you can conjure in the gaming world. From Star Wars Battlefront 2 to the new hit tearing up the charts, surprise mechanics, it's easy to get why people perceive them as bad, and yet they don't get it. Matt Bilby, EVP of Strategic Growth at EA, says, 25 years at EA and I still struggle with the external perception that we're just a bunch of bad guys. Hi folks, it's Falcon, and today on gameranx we asked the question, how does EA not understand why they get so much hate? So, we could have easily titled this, Is EA Blind? But I think that is letting them off the hook just a little bit. Similarly, I think it's particularly interesting that they send out this single individual person to talk about how, even after 25 years, he struggles with the perception they're just a bunch of bad guys, as if EA is just a bunch of guys, as if it's just a group of humans making games and that's it. No. If that's genuinely Matt Bilby's feelings, I feel a bit sorry for him. I don't know Matt Bilby. I don't know what he's like in real life. And if you want me to be totally honest, I don't care. I'm never gonna know Matt Bilby. I'm never gonna have to ask Matt Bilby not to be late to show up to something. Matt Bilby himself might be a great guy. I just don't care about his demeanor at all. Good or bad, it's irrelevant to me. The road to hell is paved with good intentions, and I'm not even saying that EA has good intentions. They might be on the bullet train to hell for all I know. I don't care. But when a representative of the company tells the press anything that indicates they don't understand why people don't like them, and fails to take into account that they are a massive multinational corporation that treats its customers like crap, I think it just kind of goes ahead and demonstrates for everybody another reason why people don't like them. They don't care. They also think that we're too stupid to understand that this individual person's feelings do not equate to the entirety of an organization's actions and perception. And they think that customer perception is so irrelevant, or at least so not worth talking about. Perhaps maybe they think it's a place that they might lose ground at if they did discuss it. I don't know. That when they sent Matt Bilby out to talk about things, he made a case about how well they treat their employees, as well as EA Originals, this wonderful program that they're helping out indie developers, so on and so forth. Now cool, it's great that they bring in these new developers and they treat them well as employees, but they also lay off hundreds of other employees, most recently in March. Rather than retain the staff for other projects, they just lay them off and hire new ones later, ones that aren't going to make the same kind of demands an employee that stays around for a longer period of time is. Something that is not an exclusive problem to the games industry whatsoever, but we have seen a lot of it lately in the games industry. But, even without that, we've got the whole BioWare had insane crunch for Anthem, which was basically worthless anyway. The video games industry is constantly more and more inundated with these turbulent development cycle stories that just isn't something we can pretend EA isn't involved in. And while addressing EA Originals, he noted that while EA Originals provides some platform for smaller developers that wouldn't otherwise have the kind of support behind them, there's also a selfish element of it, a quote-unquote way for us to connect to talent on smaller ideas, also known as a way for EA to control even the small games industry, the indie games industry. But whatever, let's handwave that aside and just assume that they treat their employees well and that they're great to the indie community, and that EA isn't just trying to grab people out of the indie community to be part of EA like they do with every single developer that they integrate into the EA ecosystem. Whatever, let's not even go that far. They do not treat consumers well. The people who are actually putting money into EA's pocket, or at very least making the case for investors to put money in EA's pocket, the people who basically make the business healthy or unhealthy, are just routinely treated as cattle, as stupid, brainless fools who don't know anything, much less what they want themselves, and that they need to be essentially told what they want, and that they won't notice when every exploitative action you take is just plainly put right in front of them. When, for instance, you include loot boxes in your game and make the grind mindlessly long encouraging people to put money into the game's randomized gambling ecosystem that will eventually yield you a means to pass by all of that grinding. Like, I don't know, maybe in Star Wars Battlefront 2, which was perhaps one of the biggest gaming controversies of the last few years. When they do that, EA so clearly demonstrates their opinion of their customers. We're lemmings in their eyes, and no one likes to be considered that. Because when a massive company considers you to be just a follower that will do whatever, they throw whatever at you. And that's exactly what EA does. Now, I would have to say the Star Wars Battlefront 2 loot box controversy is possibly one of the biggest controversies I've seen the entire time I've played video games, which dates back to the 1980s. I must disclose if I say something like that. But EA has been behind some of the most interesting controversies through the years, with them talking about how friendly they are to developers. It's a little bit ironic, because through the years they've bought a number of studios and ran them into the ground. This goes as far back to Origin, the developer of the Ultima games, which they shut down directly after poorly performing entries to the Ultima franchise that were developed hastily under EA's ownership in order to get them out. But that's a story that repeats itself and repeats itself and repeats itself, even with studios that technically EA games started, like Visceral Games, which started out as EA Redwood Shores, a subsidiary, and eventually grew to create the Dead Space series, which, again, once it gained any bit of success, EA ran it into the ground, made it into something it wasn't, forced microtransactions into a narrative-based game, and shut the studio down. Then let's talk about them rushing Mass Effect Andromeda out, which again would have been bad for both developers as well as the customers, in that there was a crunch. The game wasn't done, they forced it out anyway, it dinged their reputation, hurt them probably more than EA itself, which is so big it doesn't matter what people say about it, and of course was a subpar product that, even if it had been finished properly, didn't even have a full concept until like halfway through the development cycle, which again was the fault of forcing a quick development cycle, of attempting to get BioWare to pursue some games as a service monstrosity while also making a frickin' Mass Effect game. It's no wonder why both turned out like crap. And again, to bring it back to a single person that they put out there to say things like, I struggle with the external perception that we're just a bunch of bad guys, you start to understand exactly how it doesn't really matter. This one individual who is probably trying to do something good with his time at a massive company by bringing in these smaller developers and actually trying to provide material support to people who are trying to make smaller scale games that are more innovative and interesting in some cases than these microtransaction laden massive games. In fact, there may actually be no one with bad intentions. I'm not going to say that that's true. I will say it's possible, but ultimately the point of the company, like the point of all companies, is to make money. And if funding some small indie game now from a passion project indie developer who's got great ideas means they have some kind of contractual obligation from that indie developer, as well as just some kind of ongoing business relationship with them, well, later, whether anybody thought about it now or not, who is now more likely to work with EA, for EA, developing things that make EA look maybe not terrible? Whether it's entirely philanthropic or not, I don't really care. It doesn't matter. It absorbs these indie studios into the EA ecosystem, which is ultimately going to result in a less good outcome than if they were just successful on their own. Are they necessarily guaranteed success if they don't sign with EA? I don't know, but I guarantee the case that EA presents them is that they probably don't have a lot of choice outside the EA ecosystem. And all of this stuff, all of the crap, whether they do some good stuff behind closed doors, release some good games, all of the crap is just out there. We see it all the time. It's impossible not to think about it when they do something new. And while some single individual may struggle with the external perception that they are just a bunch of bad guys, to just reiterate, it doesn't really matter if the guys at EA are good or bad. It matters what the company does. And what this company has just repeatedly done to people is shown that it has no confidence, no regard, or even a lot of cases basic empathy towards its customers. And even though they might be treating these indie devs and some employees well, I don't know that I consider that to be like a valid case for them. People like to try to compartmentalize problems like excessive crunch as of the specific developer. Like the fact BioWare had excessive crunch for both Anthem and Mass Effect Andromeda. Somehow that's their problem and not the massive, larger entity that owns them, placing financial pressure on them to deliver. Yeah, I don't buy that. So at this point, there is no good reason not to understand why there's an external perception that they're a bunch of bad guys. It's because people tend not to separate the individuals from the massive entity that is screwing them. Well, I don't personally agree with it. A lot of people attribute it to, oh, well, if it's a bad company, it must be bad people running it. Now, I'm not saying it's good people running it, but I'm saying I don't really make any assumptions because I know that the end goal of a company is to make money, and there's always a pressure to deliver growth in publicly traded companies, which EA is. The financial incentives will always cause the exact situation we're talking about, good people or bad people at the helm. So it really doesn't matter the kind of guys they have at the company. What matters is what the company does, and it is routinely negative. So there you go, EA. That's the problem. Now you guys understand it, right? Get it? Good. So where is everybody on this one? Leave us a comment. Give us your EA thoughts. All of them. And if you like this video, please click like. If you're not subscribed, now's a great time to do so. We upload brand new videos every day of the week, and the best way to see them first is, of course, a subscription. So click subscribe, and do not forget to click the notification bell. As always, we thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter at FalconTheHero, and we'll see you next time right here on GameRanx.